Survivor fans, great news. The Survivor 47 cast just dropped, and there's a ton of buzz about these 18 new players. And one of the really exciting things is that Jon Lovett from Pod Save America, host of Love It or Leave It, a very funny political podcast, is part of this cast. And so we have an interview that Mike Bloom from RHAP and Parade.com did with Jon before the game started. Mike talked to all 18 cast members of Survivor 47. We are going to have those interviews coming your way in full. We're dropping them over the next 9 straight days here on RHAP. Today, we're dropping Jon Lovett's interview with Mike. And then from here on out, every day after this, we will drop a podcast with 2 more interviews from the Survivor 47 cast. Make sure you don't miss anything going into the Survivor 47 season kicking off on September 18th. All you have to do is go to robhasawebsite.com/subscribe and subscribe on your podcatcher of choice, or hit subscribe here on YouTube to get the video version of everything we're doing. Survivor's right around the corner. I couldn't be more excited. Here is Mike Bloom's interview with Jon Lovett.
How are you doing right now? I know that it's probably just been sitting in anticipation. I know you were probably used to talking, so I can imagine sitting in silence for so long has been a little bit of a miserable existence.
You know what? I think it's good for me to shut the fuck up. So I think that that's been probably a good thing. I'm glad I've had the chance to do that for a few days. Good to talk to you, though.
Yeah.
It's nice to talk to you.
I was going to say, we're about to open up that valve right now, and I'm excited to see what flows out. Well, to start, I think there might be some people that are familiar with you, but just in case, why don't you give your name, your age, and your occupation?
My name is Jon Lovett. I'm 41, and I am a podcast host.
I mean, that's kind of putting it mildly. I mean, I would go so far as to say media empire guru, but
Yeah, I am a co-host of a show called Pod Save America. I host a live show that tours called Love It or Leave It. And with my friends, John and Tommy, we started a company called Crooked Media, which is meant to be a place for people who are pretty frustrated by politics, but still care about democracy. And we're really proud of how it managed to take off and build like a really amazing community. So, yeah.
There are people who play this game. They're like, I'm so excited to get unplugged from the world for 26 days. I would imagine for someone whose job is to follow politics, that counts like doubly for you.
Yeah. Yes. I like, look, it's the middle of a very important election year. So it was so really excited to do this and really excited to have 5 weeks to focus completely on strange experiment in deprivation and democracy for a few weeks. And then, like, I'm going to come out of this and hit the ground running, covering the presidential election, the Senate elections, the House elections, the down ballot elections. And we have like a whole bunch of shows planned. Like, I'm going to come out of this and just hit the road and whatever shape I'm in. But for now, yes, I handing over my phone and just being completely disconnected. I don't think I've ever done it for 48 hours, let alone to do it for 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what got you into this, as you call it, strange experiment of deprivation and democracy. I'm color me surprised to find out that like you're a Survivor fan and wanted to be on the show. So talk to me about your history with watching the show and what made you decide to say, this is something I want to do.
So I watched the first season when it aired. I was in high school and I loved it. My family wasn't watching it. I was watching it alone. And I remember in the final moments before Richard Hatch won and it becoming clear that he would, running around my house, just screaming to people who didn't understand what was going on. My parents had no idea why I was losing my mind over this, but I was riveted by it. I loved it and I kept up with it. And then I stopped watching as I went into politics and came back to it in the last couple of years, but I came back to it while I was hosting a show. And because I didn't want to be spoiled, I've never talked about Survivor on the show and this has happened to me a bunch of times with a bunch of different shows. I want to let people know that I'm like catching up to this thing. But if I say it, somebody is going to find a way to spoil the show. So I've literally not talked about it on these podcasts. And by the way, like, I didn't even Google Survivor because I was afraid of spoilers as I made my way through the last 24 seasons. And so I came into this like it was really very organic. Like, I was watching Survivor with a few friends. We were catching up together. And the more I watched, I would kind of open up a notes document on my computer and like write little thoughts down that were like the formation of what a video might be if I answered Jeff's plea in the commercial. And the more I started writing down a story of why I wanted to be on Survivor, the more I believed it and the more I was excited about the possibility.
Well, let's have you refer maybe back to the notes doc that you were compiling. Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
Survivor non-winner, like I feel like uh Penner
Mm,
is someone that I related to, not for good and for ill, right? Because like what I appreciated about how he played and what I saw kind of that reminded me of how I might play are both the ways in which he was very smart and strategic, but also the ways in which he might come on a little too strong.
mhm.
And I thought in that there was something that uh, I had a kinship with. I really love the way Sophie played
Mm.
in her season that she won, and I just appreciated her intellect and how she approached the game. Those are the two that come to mind.
So is your, I would say, like, identity in a manner of speaking, like your job, obviously, you do have some name, some renown. Is this something you plan on, being explicit about? Do you think this is something that people could find threatening, given it's a game where anyone can find anything threatening?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And I really, even now as I sit here, I'd like to tell you that I have some like grand answer to it. I do plan to feel it out, but I also, we see this all the time. Someone's like, "Oh, I'm 19, but I'm going to say I'm 22." Like, I'm a lawyer, but I'm going to say I'm a law student, and maybe that helps them. I don't know. I'm inclined to think that any way in which I feel like I need to deceive people is a bit self-aggrandizing. Like, I'm just going to be honest. Like, I host a comedy podcast. If like I'm like I've had success in podcasting. If someone's like, "Oh wow," like, like I don't know, like if someone here maybe knows the show, like I can say, "Oh, that's great. That's exciting. I'm a podcast host. The most embarrassing job in the world." I don't want to build it up. I don't want to play it down. I just kind of want to hit the middle with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Give me your biggest superpower and your biggest piece of kryptonite coming into this game. Because I would imagine on
Question.
paper, being in a job that's all about communication and reading votes, I'd imagine that was a superpower. But is that the number one for you?
That's interesting. I think that, as you know, as often the case, I think like my strength is my weakness.
Mm,
It's that I think at my best, I have an intensity that can be persuasive and charismatic
mm.
and can bring people along. And at the same time, it can also, I think, turn people off and push people away. And so I have this, I don't want to hide, I don't want to not be myself in the hopes that instead of playing to win, try to play not to lose and then never show who I am in the event that I do go home before I win. Uh, I'm thinking about how to make sure that when I am being myself, that it's the version of myself that is persuasive and enticing and not off putting and annoying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. What has your preparation been like? Because to say you have had a busy schedule would be putting it mildly. How have you been trying to like get ready for this $1 million adventure of a lifetime on top of all the other stuff you have?
I have been, I have, uh, I am sure that you are talking to people that are here with me, steps away, that have been training for this impressively for months, if not years on end. And I would like to say that that's me. It is not. I have been doing some puzzles. I have been practicing a lot of different kinds of puzzles, not necessarily survivor specific puzzles, but just the different kinds of geometric and slide puzzles that you might see in this kind of game and jigsaw puzzles. I've been practicing that, and in the most way possible. I've taken a lot of hot exercise classes. I've been
Mm,
trying to get in shape in a very hot. That was one of my ways of preparing. And other than that, I really um I've been thinking a lot. Basically, I thought about preparation. One is against other people. The second is how to play against the game.
mm,
And the third is how to play against myself. And what I mean by that is, yes, it's important to have some kind of strategic thinking about how you're going to approach this game. And it's important to think about how you'll deal with idols and advantages and what it means when those come your way. But in the end, I do think more often than not, this game is won or lost by how people play against themselves, like how they manage their frustrations, their annoyances, their insecurities, their paranoias, their hopes, their expectations when they're hungry, when they're tired, when they haven't spoken to a person they can truly trust in weeks. And how to make sure when you're in that state, you aren't losing touch with your feelings about the game or the other players, I think is the biggest challenge. And I don't know how you can prepare for that other than to think a lot about kind of simple core approaches to keep in mind, touchstones to keep in mind when the going gets tough.
you talk about playing against the other players and the people that are steps away. I'm sure you're making some vibes with people. You haven't been able to talk with each other, but who are you feeling out? Who do you love it and who do you leave it? Who are some people that you're saying like on the beach, first day, perfect. Best case scenario, ride or die.
Again, I am getting scoped out and like evaluated left and right. Fine. I'm sure that's a valuable thing to do. I'm kind of stepping back and looking around and I'm just thinking like, who are the where am I where are my gays and my theys, you know? Uh, that's one thing. There's somebody who brought a book of math puzzles, and I'm feeling very good about that person. I'm also envious of their math puzzles. Um, and it's funny. No one can speak, and so everyone's trying to convey warmth and openness. And what that ends up meaning is just everybody's kind of stoic, and then their faces kind of catch each other and they shoot each other these charismatic, high
Mhm.
wattage grins, the same ones that got them casted, at each other over and over again. And there's a, yeah, I
Mm.
don't know.
Well, what about on the other side? Is there anybody that you're not picking up some good vibes from? Or to your point, is it just everyone stonewalling, so it's tough to discern?
You know, there's a couple guys who have a kind of quiet confidence that I find threatening. You know, that there's a lot of concern in this. Everyone is very aware of how they're being perceived and
Mm,
and you feel that impacting just their little movements through the world. You know, when you're at a restaurant and you're with a friend and you realize that on either side of you, there's somebody dining alone
mm,
and you know that they're kind of listening because you know that they can't help it, you know? Everyone here is dining alone. Everyone here is doing that, and you just see it kind of like you just see the kind of attention like wash back and forth across this group of people. And I am resistant. I feel it, like the urge to be like, oh, they're my person, they're not my person. Maybe true, but maybe not. So
Hmm.
I'm fighting this maybe to my detriment. I don't know.
Well, I know that you kind of removed yourself a bit from the online fandom to not spoil yourself, but I'm intrigued. What is your most controversial Survivor opinion? Your hottest take about a season or a player?
Here's my honest answer to that right now. And again, famous last words. Man, putting us on talking about this before the game, it's a piano hanging over our heads. Once the game starts, fine. Uh, I'll tell you what has been my frustration, which is, and you see it even in this season, maybe to its extreme, this idea of you have to make big moves, you have to build your resume. And up to and including when people say, oh, I may put myself in fire to prove that I deserve it. And, I've never heard of somebody like in a war, nobody fights an extra battle to prove they're good at war. And, you know, I I find this idea of like big moves for their own sake a kind of performance of strategy, but not strategy.
Mm.
It's the theater of strategy to put on a show for the jury to show that you understand how to be strategic or how to play the game. And I don't have an answer to it, but for whatever reason, it really kind of bugs me. It feels like, yeah, it feels performative. I don't know how to get around that, because if that is ultimately what people value, then it is what is valuable. That's the nature of this game. The group of people playing decides what has value. But that to me, I find a little bit strange.
Right. It's tough to kind of rebuild the building while you're inside it, you know?
Yeah.
Last thing I want to ask is if you could bring out a celebrity or a fictional character as a loved one for a loved one's visit, who are you picking and why?
What a question. You know what? Would be fun to have out here? I'll tell you. Chelsea Handler.
Oh,
That would be funny. I think people would really like that. I'd like that. What a funny person to show up.
yeah. And listen, everyone likes to get roasted, at least a little light
Yeah.
char. And then she's
Yeah.
somebody that could certainly light you up. She'd be her own fire making challenge.
For sure. For sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, this was such a fantastic time. I mean, I'm one of the people, and I'm sure I'll be speaking on behalf of many who eventually will find out that you're on this. That was shocked to your point that yeah, you were on this in the first place. But this was such a delight to get to talk to you, and I think to discover a new part of yourself, and we're going to discover so much more over the next 26 days.
I hope so. I hope so. Nice to talk to you. Nice
Yeah,
to meet
nice to
you.
talk to you. Nice to meet you as well. Well, all the best. All the I hope you are doing well in the lead up to the big day, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens out there on the beach. I'll see you on the other side.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Mike.
All right, have a good one.
Everybody, there you have it. Jon Lovett getting ready for Survivor 47. Great job with Mike Bloom. We will have interviews for you over the next 9 days here on RHAP. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast at robhasawebsite.com/subscribe. And can't wait to go through the entire cast with you here on Rob Has a Podcast. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.